Something.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting for Monday, April the 8th. We are being live streamed as well, so for those at home, welcome. Before we get started, I'm just asked if you're able to please stand for the mic. We'd like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions, and it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and its resources. Just a regular reminder to members to declare any opinion or interest that you may have in respect of any item on tonight's agenda. See any hands up now, but if something arises, you can declare it at that time. Minutes from our March 11th regular council meeting. Can I have a mover and seconder to adopt those? Moved by Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Donato. Yes, you weren't here.
I wasn't here.
Isn't it supposed to be the March like 24th or 5th?
25th.
Yes.
Not the 11th? Yes.
Okay. Yes, and Councillor Fegan wasn't here, so Councillor Michaels moved that.
I can move it. I was not that long. I'm like, I was not the March 11th, but I remember saying that before, so I'm like, this is.
Any discussion on the March 25th meeting?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, thank you. All right, so before we get into presentations, we do a question period. Are there any questions? Okay. All right, so we have two presentations this evening and then a proclamation. So our first presentation is from Dufferin OPP, and we're joined by Detachment Commander, Inspector Mike Pasquale, as well as Staff Sergeant John Bulligan. I think, Inspector, you're here just to sort of say hello and introduce yourself.
That's right.
And then Staff
John
Bulligan will do the presentation. So the floor is yours, gentlemen.
Okay. Well, good evening. It's great to meet you. My name is Mike Pasquale. I'm the detachment commander at Dufferin, and I've been in the position now for 6 months as of last week. So I'm super excited to be part of your community and to work with Staff Sergeant Bulligan and Staff Sergeant Corey Chawartha, who unfortunately couldn't make it this evening. But yeah, Staff Sergeant Bulligan has a presentation, I believe. So I'll turn it to John, subject to any questions that anybody might have of me.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. If it's about auto theft, please ask John.
The first meeting's easy.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I got, I guess, 10 minutes, Jennifer told me, is it okay if I sit here? Or-
Yeah, absolutely.
I was asked to speak about, I guess specifically our auto theft grant. That is a regional grant, but Dufferin OPP has led on it. I was a grant writer for it. So I'm gonna speak about the grant sort of at the tail end, but I think it's important that if we're gonna talk about auto theft, we talk about current trends, so everyone's aware. Trends in the province, and what's important are trends locally in Dufferin County. And then get into very specific trends in Shelburne for your own awareness. I'll get into just some quick tips also, because one of the requirements of the grant is public education awareness, so you're letting me check one of the boxes. Right. And actually, I brought swag for everybody, so, well, not for everybody, but I'll leave it out. These are those key fob bags. Just a reminder when I get into tips, not everything is foolproof, and you have to use a layered approach when you with auto theft prevention. So if you can just click to the next slide. What I'd like to stress to the public, because this is a public forum, is that it's not just a financial crime. These are people get injured and killed. And so I'm going to show a video that demonstrates that. That, you know, the public has to be mindful of this issue. So if you could just flip to the next slide and just click in the middle and it'll play the video. So this is a recent video, it's a public video. It's our auto theft team in 2023. They were doing surveillance on carjacking and basically they go in to block the underground. This is our investigators. As a theft is occurring, I don't think it was a carjacking, it was just straight theft. Whoa. Okay, so I just really want to stress to the public and everyone here the dangers involved. I personally experienced in 2019, I was standing outside my vehicle and I was struck by a stolen vehicle. So they will do anything to get away. Yeah, so just flick to the next slide. Unless you want to see that again. It's highlights. Pretty good, actually. Yeah. And actually wait, okay, if you want to show it again. You know, I'll just pop up on this. While this is in Toronto, one of the accused is local, fairly local. Yeah, it's not just a city issue. We'll go on to that. So just general trends, as we all know, dramatic increase. Ontario is actually considered a global capital of auto theft. Anecdotally, they'll leave Ontario license plates in countries that they're going to because it's a badge of honor if you have an Ontario plate on your vehicle. So if you're for any reason, you know, visiting Eastern European country and see an Ontario plate, that's a stolen vehicle. Of note of that is that insurance companies now are working to repatriate vehicles. So, you know, while there's quite a cost to repatriating it, the insurance companies feel that it's worth that as a message to these crime groups. Yeah, if you want to flip over to the next. So why Ontario and why now? Big sort of driving force at all. The dramatic increase started around in 2019. As we all know, there was a dramatic shortage of vehicles. The lots were empty. Around that time, I was fortunate to be on an auto theft project, and it was involved in re-VIN vehicles where people were buying privately vehicles, but unknowingly that they were buying stolen vehicles because of such a demand for vehicles. Proximity to the Montreal port. Basically they could get from here to there in a couple hours very quickly. The OPP out east has been doing a great job intercepting it on the 401.
and then they move up to Highway 7 and Highway 7 and even going as far as up to Algonquin Park to try to get back to Quebec without us intercepting them. Some other reasons, yeah, low risk, high return. Hopefully, and that pendulum is gonna start swinging the other way as far as sentencing goes. If you want to flip to the next slide. Just more about trends. So big question that people have is, and we all think all these vehicles are going overseas. A substantial amount stays in Ontario, and what's happened is they become re-VIN. So Project Myra is that project that I spoke about, where we just investigated re-VIN vehicles. We recovered just over 500 re-VIN vehicles. So as I said earlier, there's, the insurance companies are repatriating them, bringing them back. Now we believe there'll be a trend in when those vehicles are going overseas, they're now actually going to re-VIN them when they go overseas, so they can't be identified. So if you want to just look at the next slide. So it basically just generally this is theft rings. There's various theft groups that work in different ways, whether it's re-VINning vehicles or getting them overseas. I won't get too much into that unless there's questions at the end about that. You flip to the next slide. So this is, just I put the key fob bags out. Again, nothing is foolproof. There's key fob boxes also, or a paint can works too. Basically, it's a relay attack. So they're relaying a signal to your from the car to the key that's in your house. It involves two people, and then that signal is copied and relayed back to the device that the individual has at the car. And then your door gets popped open and they can they can start your vehicle up at that point. 30 seconds I've seen, different ways for different vehicles, but that's a very common means right now. Go and just flip to the next slide. And that's just a general picture of how the relay attack works. Flip to the next slide. So here's a big question. What is everybody driving the room? Are you on that list? So yeah, CRV is up there, but what's important to look at is the percentages. So Land Rover, Range Rover has a very high percentage. CRVs are up there because of the number of CRVs that are out on the roads. Project Myra, I'd say like about 30% of the vehicles were Land Rovers, Range Rovers, including Mitch Marner's that we got back. So if you remember, he was carjacked. So let's flip to the next slide. Tips, I won't get into specifics, you could just see there, but what we stress is a layered approach. No one means is the be all. So steering wheel lock with key fob bag or fob box. Also where you're parking your vehicle, you're putting, maybe if you think it's a priority vehicle, put the less likely vehicle to be stolen behind that. If you can clear out your garage, that is probably one of the best means of preventing vehicle theft. So again, that layered approach, even to your residents. Lighting is very important. What you want to do is get them to move on, not to move on to your neighbor, but and not to move on to Orangeville, but maybe to move on south of Highway 9. Even south of Caledon would work. So yeah, just a layered approach is very important. No one thing is foolproof. So flip to the next slide. Yeah, so just a few more things. Yeah, different, even the so people use air tags. Those are good, but they can be defeated and found. There's other devices that are properly installed into your vehicle. And that's why Quebec, there's certain, not requirements, but there's a higher amount of those tracking devices on Quebec vehicles. So it's kind of driving the market into Ontario. So you could just Google there's not that many companies. I think there's two main companies that do that sort of installation. Next slide. So I get into the revens, like I said, a lot remain here. I think as, you know, as police in Montreal and CBSA do a better job at the ports. My prediction is that we're gonna see an increase in rebidding of vehicles that remain in the province. So it's a buyer beware approach, know who you're buying from. You can bring it to a dealership to confirm that the VIN, they could plug it in. It's not foolproof, but certain steps like that. So, you know, we're so focused on the vehicles being stolen out of driveways and that, but we're not paying attention to the purchasing of vehicles, which is a serious issue. Next slide. So what's important, local trends, Dufferin County. This is a great picture. I said seizure last week. That's actually now 2 weeks ago. Great job by our frontline officers. So this was actually an air tag that was, it was in Shelburne, and the officers were able to get on it. And it was seen being put into a sea container. And sorry, they didn't see it being put in the sea container. Long story short, they got the vehicle back. I don't want to get into the meat of it, but yeah. So just flip to the next slide. So unfortunately, we are one of the top 3 in central region of OPP. Caledon is way ahead with us and Nottawasaga close by. So part of that is our proximity. I mean, we're not in close proximity to highways, but we're close proximity to Peel. Brampton, which has a huge Peel, is the top in the province. So we're not that far away from them geographically. So common areas are more so the urban areas in Dufferin, but also on the periphery of Orangeville, south end of Mono and Amaranth. Shelburne is also what I would call a hot spot, and I can sort of speak of some numbers that I didn't put up there because I just had to do a little more research. So last year, well, generally last year, just over a year, we had 105 vehicles stolen. So I think that's substantial, and the inspector would probably agree with that. You know, 20 years ago when I was a frontline officer, if you got a stolen vehicle, it was a big deal. Now our officers may start their day and have to do 3 stolen vehicles back to back because they happen sort of together. So next slide.
If I may, anything
Yeah.
John says, I agree with, sorry. But no, to John's point, it's funny because as a frontline officer on the road, if you had a stolen car, like that was a very big investigation. Whereas our folks out there working hard all the time, 24/7, they're coming across these things as normal.
It's yeah, it's almost like stealing something from a car. A stolen vehicle is that common right now. So yeah, hopefully we could trend that downwards. So just some rough numbers, Shelburne in 2021, these are stolen vehicle occurrences. There was only 2 that I found in 2020, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. 2020, there was also 2. In 2023, there was 8. So a substantial increase. This year in Dufferin County, there's 16 stolen vehicle occurrences. So still fairly high. Sorry, last week we had 2, I believe, 2 or 3. So we are addressing it, and this is how we're addressing it, which is really what I think we wanted me to talk about. So Project CLASP is that auto theft grant, focuses on enforcement, public engagement, training, and intelligence. So the enforcement, not to get too much into the details, but we have an analyst that looks at where the issues are, and we address the issues through the analytics, where we need to be at what time. Also, public education, what areas do we need to educate the public, like geographically, where do we need to go into communities? And it's a work in progress, it's new. Actually, just this week, the project manager has been hired. So that's a big step forward. The public education, like I said, actually we're at the home show in Orangeville in Mono this weekend. Training, so it's a very frontline focused approach. Training officers on what to look for, to be at the right place at the right time and to do the right thing. That's really what we're working on. And again, that intelligence to direct our enforcement. And I think there's one more slide. Yeah, there is one more slide, questions.
Thanks, John. Questions?
I had a brother-in-law who lives in the Alliston area, and he put a wheel lock on his truck, second time. It was stolen once before, so he put the wheel lock on it, thinking it won't be stolen again. They smashed all the windows instead, because they couldn't get into the truck and get it moving. So that is the opposite end of the spectrum, I guess, with these thieves, they're willing to damage your vehicle if they can't get into it.
I've never heard of that, that's unique, yeah, I personally have never heard of that, but his vehicle was stolen.
It wasn't stolen, unfortunately, but it was totally damaged.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, I mean, the wheel locks are great because they are visible like to the thief, right?
Mhm.
But I have never heard of that, it's unfortunate,
They have to talk to somebody at Nottawasaga,
yeah.
area there, because
Yeah.
that happened to him, a couple months ago, that's why I brought the topic up
Okay.
about auto theft. And when the Ontario plates are stolen, I guess we have to get them replaced.
Yeah.
If they're stolen on the vehicle here, and I guess there's a cost factor as well to that, to replace the vehicles when the plates, I mean, when the vehicle has been stolen, or.
Yes, but new plates are usually like, I think about $30 to get new plates.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, you know, that may be put into your whole insurance cost, I don't know specifically, yeah.
And then my final question's on the risk factor, because you say there's such a low risk factor for these guys, they're willing to go at it because they're gonna. I mean, basically go to jail for what, almost nothing, and then get back out and be able to redo it again, sort of type situation. Is there something we can do to convince, both provincial or federal government to step up the sentencing, or do something to make them less likely to wanna get into that business?
I don't know, that's a political question, tough for me, I feel like, you know, fingers crossed, the federal government has finally recognized it as an epidemic. And they dictate, you know, criminal laws and sentencing and that, so I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen, but. Yeah, I don't know, that's a kind of a political question.
But is it something, I guess the way I'm trying to get at it is if we were to maybe put some more pressure on, say, our MP or towards the feds, would that be of any assistance as well? As municipalities, especially those that are in the high risk areas.
I mean, I'm, you know, as a police officer, it's hard for me to answer, because I don't know what's required to influence. I would think so, I would think, the more influence, the better.
Okay,
Yeah, I would like to think that.
okay, thanks.
Okay, Councilor Keegan?
I'm a very techie kind of guy. I've seen all this issue and pandemic, as you phrase it, is a very good term for this. I personally bought a Faraday cage for our keys, and just for the public's knowledge, are these effective on slowing down, if anything else, a lot of these instances?
So, you know, every bag should be tested, they're not, again, that's why I stress the layered approach, so even when I'm giving these out. I'm stressing that, you know, don't put it by your door, right? You wanna weaken the signal, even if you could throw it in a coffee can, right? You know, just the pouch itself is a good reminder, at least to everybody, to be mindful of auto theft, so. Yeah, from a technical perspective, it's not foolproof. We actually give a disclaimer card with you. You know, so you want to top up that.
The more layers you put in, the better off.
100%, yeah.
Okay, but the Faraday cages that you can buy on Amazon, whatever else, there's still a layer that you could possibly use that could potentially add another one.
That's a good way of putting it, they're a layer, exactly, yeah.
Thanks, having the camera, the well lighted area.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Councilor Sherry?
So just thanks for your presentation, first of all, John. Quick question about what we as the public can do to help you to negate this, short of, I mean, in Toronto, there are people putting collapsible bullards in their driveway to prevent the vehicles at night from,
Yep,
I mean, if this is such a pandemic.
yeah, that's,
Like, what can we look, I mean, aside from having a camera and, you know, well lit, drawing a standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Protect your own vehicle, encourage your neighbors to do the same, and what I didn't bring up, is do not hesitate to call the police. These things happen late at night, and I mean very late at night, right up until it's almost daylight, so, don't hesitate to call the police for a suspicious vehicle. Even during the day, don't hesitate to call, because not to get into different techniques, but sometimes they'll want to see your VIN number. So we often get calls of that, of people going into driveways for that, so can't stress enough, because you know, we will, if we find out that a neighborhood may be targeted, you know, during the day, we'll do something there that night. Because it's not, I mean, by all means, it's great to catch them, but it's also disruption. Like I said, we want them to go south, right? So the cap.
I don't know, there's no. Okay, that's actually a really good point, is that a lot of constituents are afraid to call the police, saying that they see something that they're not sure of. So by all means, I mean, the fact that you just mentioned that if you're not sure, call anyway.
It doesn't matter, we're out patrolling anyway, so help us patrol in the right spot. We can't be everywhere all the time, right? So, yeah, by all means.
Denise?
Sorry, in some of the other campaigns or initiatives, there's been advice on what not to do. So maybe you can comment on the person who wants to be the vigilante and chase the car down the street. Alternatively, what not to leave in your car anymore, because that could actually promote identity theft. I think maybe if you could share that with the ones as well, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm talking a lot about stealing a vehicle, but what's in the vehicle also, we have to be mindful of. I think that video in itself, if the public saw that, shows what people will do to get away. So, yeah, we can't stress enough, you just have to let it go and let us try to deal with it. Yeah, very, very dangerous.
Is there a reason, John, I mean, other than proximity or any other factor like that, is there a reason why small towns generally just seem to be a target?
Actually, yeah, well, I can't really answer that, but it's funny because CBC did a thing, did a news article about the edges of Ottawa, like Barhaven area and that, and they called it, I don't know, sleepy community or something like that. So it's not just here, it's happening everywhere. And, you know, unfortunately, I could, you know, I don't wanna say it's gonna happen more so, but you know, Peel Regional Police are real like first class when it comes to auto theft, York Regional Police, so you know, the concern is that it's gonna get pushed outwards. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but it's a possibility, it's a possible trend. Yeah, why small communities, again, if you're close to the highway, like I know Nottawasaga gets hit very hard. They're actually second, we're in third. You know, when you look at their proximity to the 400, I know Bradford does. So a lot of it is the highway, they could get on the highway and if they are going to the Montreal port, that's what they want to do, is get there as soon as possible, so. If you're community close to the highway, I think there is a higher propensity.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Inspector. All right, so we just have a motion to receive the presentation for information. Councilor Bichardi, seconded by. All in favor? That's carried. All right, thanks again, guys.
Thanks.
About the good work. All right, our next presentation is from Dufferin Community Foundation, and we have Ethan Boxley and Derek Fisher joining us this evening. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us. I'm hoping that giving away money is as exciting as car theft. we're setting it up here so that we're not twisted around, so hopefully we can coordinate, thank you. So yeah, good evening, and it's nice to meet all of you. We did do this presentation for Dufferin County Council, but wanted to connect with everybody. So that means coming to all of the municipalities individually, and hopefully there's folks in the audience as well that are interested. We're happy to get the message out as far and wide as we can. So we are the Forever Fund. Next slide. Thank you. For Dufferin County, we invest donor gifts into permanent endowed funds and use the income earned to give grants to charities every year forever. It's important that people understand what a foundation is and how it works, because I ask this question all the time, just ask it today. Somebody that I knew quite well, said, "Do you understand how a foundation works?" No, actually, I don't. And so, well, you build a foundation of funds, and the funds create interest, and the interest goes back out to the community in the form of grants. We are 100% local. All the grant monies go to qualified donees that serve residents of Dufferin County. And next slide, please. Part of a growing network of more than 200 community foundations across Canada. And as of 2020, community foundations were managing assets of more than 6.3 billion. We don't have a billion here in Dufferin County, but we're doing pretty well. We started up in 2018 to serve as a link between donors and charitable causes in Dufferin County. So there are generous people in Dufferin County, and to connect them with things, the issues and the causes and the organizations that they care about is a big part of what we do. So our goal, our immediate goal, is $10 million in our first 10 years. We're not stopping there, of course. If we got to 10, that'd be great, and we keep going. If we had 10 million on deposit, we would be giving out approximately 450,000 into the community every year to local charities, and that's a pretty good amount of money. So we're on our way there.
And just to give you a little bit of frame of reference, United Way of Guelph Wellington Dufferin annually gives out about 55,000 across Dufferin County. So to have $450,000 going every year to different charities in Shelburne and Orangeville and all the parts in between, it really will be a game changer for our local charities.
Where we are today, so we're at 3.5 million, rising quickly. In 2022, we gave out 35,000 in the form of grants. So some of those grants, just so everyone understands, are competitive grants. That's where we put out a notification, certain fund has a grant available, and we get applications in, just like the Dufferin County does. Some of them are donor advised funds. In total, it was 35,000 in 2022. In 2025, we can already estimate that we'll be giving out 115,000 a year, which is pretty significant rate of growth.
So as a local community foundation, and I'm sorry about my voice, I've been sick for the last couple of weeks, not infectious anymore. I did a good job on my voice. But because we're part of the Community Foundations of Canada network and we're here, we can be a conduit for federal grants that come around. So for instance, during the pandemic, there was an emergency support fund. And I believe that was a baptism of fire for our organization because we were only a year or two old. But we were given $170,000 to give out to our local charities to help them with a pandemic response locally. We also received some corporate grants, for instance, from Enbridge Community Futures that we're able to flow through. And those are monies that wouldn't necessarily come to Dufferin County if the community foundation wasn't here. Most recently, we had the Community Services Recovery Fund, and that benefited some charities and nonprofits in Shelburne as well. And that brought $270,000 in funding. to us for investing in systems and processes, which are those things that are usually on the list of to-dos that nonprofit organizations have, and that they're forever because it's not program funding. So they've been able to upgrade their payment processing systems, upgrade their donor relationship management systems, all of those kinds of things that are important.
And those are
Future.
federal funds, by the way, in case you didn't realize that. It's when the federal government has funding to give out, which doesn't happen frequently perhaps, but if you don't have a community foundation, you might miss out on that granting opportunity. So it was good that we were in place and able to get that funding into the community.
We also help celebrate Nonprofit Appreciation Week. This is just past, so I know we did a proclamation, so you're all aware of it. But it's the third week of February every year. It's been legislated by the Ontario government. We were in our third year this year. And we organized a morning glory breakfast for the sector, and it really was, well, one of the first times in my memory anyway, that people in the nonprofit sector and charities were able to come together, connect with one another and celebrate their impact, because usually everybody's just back at their desk, head down, working with clients. So it was it was something that really, I think, improved the morale of the sector, which has suffered over the last number of years from a lot of workplace stress, and especially through the pandemic. And long hours, lower pay, all of those good things. So one thing about Nonprofit Appreciation Week is it gives us a chance to talk about the sector and the actual impact that it has. I think everybody knows that it does good work and that it helps people. But the scope of the nonprofit sector is vast. So it's everything that you might think of immediately, like food banks and counseling and housing programs and shelter. But it's also arts and culture. It's also the sports and recreation programs. It's our faith programs, the environment, human rights, all of that kind of stuff. It's also a major driver of the economy in Ontario. So the nonprofit sector comprises 7.9% of our GDP, which is more than a lot of industries. And of course, they're essential to our quality of life. It would be really difficult to imagine our communities without charities and nonprofits and the work that they do. So if you miss Morning Glory, we have another event coming up. It's in June. It's called the Evening Under the Stars. If you've been able to come out to it in the past, it's a really wonderful gala event. It's outdoors on the first night of summer at a private residence in Mono. And it's our only fundraiser of the year. So we'll be sending an invitation, and we would really love it if you would come. And finally, some ways we can work together. Now, we're already working together because you were one of the first municipalities in Dufferin County to set up a Shelburne Community Fund. You invested $1,000 to initiate the fund. And one thing that we would love to do is maybe work more closely with you on how we can build this fund up so that it gets to a granting status. So that, like Shirley said, the interest generated every year can go into different grants programs. Now, across the country, community foundations have partnerships with their municipalities. They're doing really special things. One thing that many community foundations do with municipalities is that the municipality will have a fund, their own endowment fund with the community foundation that, built up over time, helps completely and sustainably fund every year their annual community grants program. Some other community foundations have a mayor's fund, again, an endowment that's built up over time that can be for targeted projects and needs. And it's something that I find really fascinating. There are a few that are doing neighborhood small grants programs with municipalities, and these are grants of $300, $500, $1,000 that go to basically neighbors helping neighbors and doing things in their community. So I just wanted to leave some of those thoughts with you.
Also, the partnership agreements is something to mention. In one of our more recent grant rounds, there was an organization that wanted to apply for a grant, but if they're not a charity, they have to partner with a qualified donee, and a municipality is one. So it's important that municipalities understand that, yes, they can partner with organizations so that they qualify for grant applications, and just to understand what that process might be, because we had somebody, I think, that couldn't put their application through because the municipality didn't understand that they could partner and could support that application. Forget which one it was, and probably doesn't matter.
Oh, and it's really important, especially for small grassroots nonprofits, especially serving diverse communities. They don't have the resources to become a charity when they need these partnerships. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Questions for centers? So in terms of exploring some of those other options that would it be best to set up sort of a follow-up?
Absolutely, that would be great.
All right. Yeah, maybe that.
Okay.
We'll work through some details.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Is it
Thank you.
possible to get a photo for social media?
Sure.
Yes, okay.
And I apologize, it is in here. If anybody wants to listen to it, it's a little.
We'll do a little Photoshop and just take
Yeah,
down the
yeah,
red.
I'm doing a little flash.
Sure.
Arnold Schwarzenegger said you're useful, so I'm being.
Multi-talented, national commander.
Send you one
Our
second.
next meeting, but eventually,
Maybe I'll squeeze over here.
No problem. No problem.
It is. Two folks want flags,
How are you?
Yeah, it was all in.
Yeah, they moved the chair.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Fair enough. Recording's on, right?
Don't forget the filter.
And then do my grandmother. Okay, 3, 2, 1, Shelburne.
Trying not to blink.
Where I go. That's good. Should be photographer. All right. To the, it's good. You want more? Are you on to? All right, thank you.
I'll apply appropriate filters.
Let me put that out of the way.
That makes sense, thank you. I don't really know.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Anyways.
I'm looking forward to that.
That'd be good.
Here, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, all right. Live again, okay, let's get a motion to receive the presentation from the Community Foundation. Mayor Hall, seconded by Councilor Green. All in favor? All right, and the final thing under presentations is a proclamation for National Volunteer Week. Whereas 24 million Canadians give their time to formal or informal types of volunteering, and locally 2,723 individuals and 179 member organizations are registered with volunteer.dufferin.ca. And whereas volunteers in Shelburne mentor children, support those feeling isolated, beautify our green spaces, and fundraise for our charitable organizations. And whereas the theme for the celebration of National Volunteer Week 2024 is Every Moment Matters, volunteers in Shelburne share their time, skills, empathy, and creativity with each and every contribution they make at a moment when we need support more than ever before. And whereas volunteers are vital to making a collective impact on the strength, inclusivity, quality of life, and well-being of our communities. And whereas Shelburne volunteers are individuals, families, workers, retirees, community members of all ages and backgrounds. And whereas the collective result of the work done by our town's volunteers is that Shelburne is a more desirable place to live, halfway there. And whereas Shelburne serve on boards, help host community festivals, stock shelves at food banks, deliver meals to seniors, help in schools, plant community gardens. And whereas and whereas organizations in Shelburne that rely on volunteers are the fundamental backbone of what helps to make our community thrive. Now therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim April 14th to the 20th as National Volunteer Week and urge my fellow citizens to recognize the crucial role played by volunteers in our community. Falling on the heels of that presentation, talked about funding for a lot of those organizations in our community. Council inquiries, the inquiries for this evening. This is for council inquiries. We had a question period earlier on, but I'll go ahead and let you do that. I guess we missed that early on.
I didn't hear that.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I just wondered if there had been any talk about or anything new with the problems that I'm having down something like Victoria Street, the water and the missing trees.
Jim, do you have any updates offhand that you could?
Through your worship, just what's been conveyed from our planner previously and town staff that the developer is working on his property down there right now for his next phase. Everything else seems to be in general conformity with what was proposed a number of years ago. General drainage course is there as well. Once that project is finished, then it'll be paved. All the stormwater catch basins and everything else will work properly from that point, but they're not to it yet. It's just too much financial encumbrance for the property owner to take it all on at once, so that's why you see it in phases over a number of years.
So the drainage, you said was fine?
Through your worship, it's in general conformance with what was proposed, back in 2016, 17 in that area. So we've been down, looked at it a number of times, myself as well as our town engineers, SBA.
When the railroad put those tracks through, they put a cement bridge right there between the two buildings to let the water run through there to the other side, to the east side of the railroad tracks, so it could drain into the Besley drain. He's blocked that off completely with a cement wall there for his fence. The lot is always wet, it's mud. We've had a school bus buried right to the frame in there. We've had 2 4-wheelers that got stuck in there. It's just a mess. He put like 8 feet of fill in there. When I moved in there in '79, that was swamp. And there was a creek that angled down there from my place through there and into the Besley drain. And that's all been blocked off. There's no drainage getting away there now.
Through your worship, any proposal that was put forward, it is in standing, built currently to what is there, realizing of course that there are still phases to go yet. But the drainage has been rerouted, as I said, with an interim plan back in 2016, 17, somewhere in there. Back down to the Besley drain.
When was SBA last there, you know?
That's probably now, it was early COVID, so it's probably a couple of years now.
Yeah, and they can try to go back. Yeah, I mean, maybe when Steve's in town next.
But if you're not gonna do anything, just tell me and I'll do something myself to fix it, because
What I'm saying is, we'll have the engineer come out if.
there was 2 surveys done. Both of them said that it could be drained with a ditch heading north from my place. He has one water drain there at the corner, but the water can't get to it because he has berms built around. He's built berms there everywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more than one way to achieve the desired result, but I guess the question is the plan that's in place that's been approved by the engineer, if they're in compliance with that plan? So I guess that's the pertinent question. And if it's been a few years since Steve's been there, maybe not a bad idea to have him go back and take a look when he's here next.
It'd be worthwhile having our engineer meet with Alex and Joe or Matt, and all three of them along with Jim go back through there.
And I'm not sure if that's a great idea, but
Or at least meet with them separately.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think let's get Steve to take a look at it first, and if there's issues, then we can decide what the best course of action is.
Through your worship, we do have planning engineering meetings every other week. We don't have one this week, so we're pretty well booked up this week for asset management. But we do have another one next week, and SBA is in town on a very, very regular basis, surveying our projects that are on the go around town, so it's easy enough.
Okay.
What about the missing trees that have been waiting on forever?
Well, I think that's something we can look at in the plans in place. If there are requirements that aren't being met, then we can identify those and talk to the landowner. Okay.
It's so muddy in there right now that the school buses are parking at the front there because they can't park at the back. It's mud everywhere.
Okay, well, we'll take a listen, see what we can do. Any council inquiries?
Wait,
Okay. All right, so we'll jump into the report. So the first report is from our manager of operations regarding our painted crosswalk pilot program and a review on that. So our CAO is going to pinch it and present that report.
Thank you, Mayor, through the mayor. So we're following up with the original program that we initiated a couple of years ago. And we had identified at that point that we would create a pilot. And the intent was to celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, among other things, with this program. We had originally envisioned that as part of a downtown focused connectivity, that it would probably be up to 10 potential painted crosswalks with a number of these yet to be determined. So today we have 3. We had the one that was originally installed for the Every Child Matters, Orange Shirt Day, and the Truth and Reconciliation. And then we moved to include Pride, and I've got the locations listed for all of you. And then the last one that we undertook was last year with Let's We Forget. So the weather in Shelburne, as we all know, can be harsh. Additionally, we do, due to that harsh wet weather, especially in the winter, undertake significant winter maintenance on our roads. And that includes applications of different materials that help us combat ice and snow and everything else. While staff knew that we were going to encounter weather-related conditions and that repainting annually was expected at a cost using our internal budget as opposed to contracting and book, we have realized and learned through the last year and a half that what we're encountering with respect to weather is very difficult to overcome. What we don't want to do is create a repetitive need to repaint these. As well-intentioned as the program was, we don't feel it's strategic any longer to continue with this. The traffic volumes that we experience on our streets, we had identified in the prior report that I provided to council, could be reassessed to see if whether relocating a particular crosswalk, for example, the one here at Victoria and Main, is exceptionally high traffic, as is William and Main, and most of the ones that we chose. However, when we relocated it to James and Main, which certainly does not have the volume of traffic that those other streets have, neither does First and Williams. The deterioration in the appearance, which is shown in Appendix 1, is true reflection of what kind of fading and impact we have on our pavement. We're also aware that downtown Orangeville have also initiated this program in advance of us, and like other municipalities, we tend to follow and want to replicate what's the success in our neighboring communities. We did so at a much lower cost because we don't have, say, the interlock that they have, for example, that creates a higher impact with respect to cost. So we're recommending as staff that due to the experience that we've had, due to the need to continually having to maintain these, and what we're experiencing is that regardless of how often we repeat these, we're gonna have to continue to do it not once, twice, potentially up to 3 times a year. That probably is not an effective use of not only our staff time, but the budget. And the deterioration is certainly not an aesthetic that we want anybody to have to become upset about. And it's just not something we're capable of keeping on top of, especially during colder climates and what we're dealing with. So the crux of this report is that the pilot was well intentioned. It did achieve a number of educational components and bringing attention to those initiatives that it profiled. But at the same time, continuing with the program is not something we believe is strategic, financially viable, and that we have an array of other opportunities, which includes to date flag raisings, many proclamations that council supports of not only the community organizations that come before you, but those that we recognize on a regular basis as a means to celebrate the diversity, equity, and inclusion of our community, but also to provide educational opportunities as well throughout. So we're recommending that the information be received and that as of this, that the program effective 2024 would be discontinued and that we would not then undertake the repayment of the existing 3 crosswalks, major crosswalks that we have currently in our community. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Really understand that the idea was great and it wasn't successful. Is there any other options that we have that are crosswalk related? So, for example, Remembrance Day, there's banners that get put up town. Is there an option that we maybe look at, a banner option that we've got the poles uptown already? And, maybe we can use those potentially.
So through the mayor, certainly what we thought we would do is similarly that a lot of this was vetted through the DEI committee. And now with the Arts, Culture and Heritage and committee with their recent update and their mandate, identifying a number of potential new initiatives that could support the vibrancy of downtown or the vibrancy of the community. Probably we could review those for 2025 to ensure that they're recognized in the draft budget for your consideration and replace this particular program with something else that might be as important in terms of educational opportunity and create that visual celebration that the painted crosswalk will provide.
I think some other communities are looking at doing things like that too, as an alternative to this, because I don't think our experience has been unique. Yeah. Okay, can I have a motion then to receive the report and to resolve that the pilot painted crosswalk program be discontinued? Vegan, seconded by Councilor Bouchardy. All in favor? It's carried. All right, next report is our first quarter financial report from our treasurer.
Thank you, and through the mayor, this is the first quarter report for 2024. So it covers a period of January 1st to March 31st. Appendix 1 and 2 are the normal reports that you're used to seeing that provide you with where we're at today in relation to the budget, as well as the bills and accounts that have been paid for the first quarter of the year. And we've actually included in that the bills and accounts that were also paid from October 1st to the end of last year, because that had never been presented to council yet. Appendix 3 lists the awards or contracts that have been decided upon this year, and we've been very busy actually with RFPs. There's I think 8 on there. Some of those were went to RFP late 2023 because they were included in the budget framework report that council had approved so that we could have those issued as soon as possible. So one of those was the Walters Creek Playground, so we have started that work. And this list will continue to be extensive for the rest of the year, once we get into some of the Parks and Recreation RFPs that will have to go out. So other than that, the only thing that I did want to bring to council's attention was the status of our tax arrears. And in the report, I did highlight just where we're at as far as property tax arrears. We did see a spike in 2020, and we knew that that was due to COVID. And following that, the tax arrears did lower again. And we have seen considerable growth in the town, so it does make sense that tax arrears would also increase proportionately, we were hoping, with the taxes that we do levy. But what we did see in 2023 is a substantial increase in property tax arrears. So we had adjusted our tax collection policy and our water collection policy in 2023. And that was just to help address our operating standards for making payments and when things are become due, when you fall behind, what happens, and just try to improve the communication with the public at that time. But unfortunately, with the economy the way it is, people are just finding it very difficult. And we are seeing that a lot of mortgage companies are not making the property tax payment for their clients anymore, which is forcing people to budget themselves for that, quarterly tax payment. But we do offer monthly payment plans, and we do offer payment plans that are suited just strictly to a specific homeowner. Like we have opened up that and taken on different payment options, but finance staff are working at ramping up our notices and sending them out earlier for 2024, so that it gives those people just an extra few months just to come to terms with the fact that, if they don't do something now, they are going to be in that situation at the end of the year. Normally, we only send 12 to 15 files to the lawyers for tax registration. And just recently, we had to send 48 properties. So that number was cut in half. The number of letters that went out in November was 100. And we cut it in half before it actually went to the lawyers. So anyway, I just want to make council aware of that. When you do see the financial statements next month from the auditors, there is an almost $500,000 increase in tax arrears. So I didn't want that to be a surprise. And that's all I have to say. If you have any questions?
Yes. Have we reached the point with any of the property owners where we've had to actually put a sale or?
We have not.
Yeah.
And the 48 that we've just registered are just starting out. So it's a year-long process before you get to that stage.
So far, we've been fortunate with the methods we've been using that we're able to come to some form of an agreement. We haven't been in a position to force, is what I guess I'm getting at, I'll say.
The majority of the properties have mortgages. So the mortgage holder steps in before it gets to that point.
And we are the first on the credit line.
We are.
I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to maybe put out a social media blast on the payment plan. I know probably put the notices in tax bills and everything else, but I do know, just kind of from my day job, talking to people, that it's not something that's all that well known as being an option that's available. And I think for a lot of people, it would be easier if they could, but reduce that to, smaller, more manageable monthly amounts as opposed to large quarterly payments that, it might seem overwhelming, and then, you know, one rolls into the next, and then before they know it becomes a problem, you can't get out from under it.
I know, but I thought we just moved out of the bank, I don't even think about it. It's not a worry for me at all.
It just, because you're right, Carrie, you know, mortgage companies unfortunately are becoming less inclined to include that in mortgage payments, and that's one of the questions I often get is, you know, are my taxes covered by my mortgage company? If they're not, I always suggest as an option, you know, consider doing the monthly payment plan, but I get the sense that it's not something that's all that well known. So if we're getting to the point where it's a problem of that magnitude, maybe it's worthwhile just putting a bit of effort into getting that messaging out to people.
We can do that.
Any way we can, yeah, so sure.
So I'm curious and say that comment on this too, what we've understood from some of our colleague municipalities is that there are people that may not understand that they have to pay property taxes. They may believe or feel that when they pay their land transfer tax, and potentially they moved here from countries where there's no property tax. And certainly the property tax model is not something they're familiar with. And may not realize as well the urgency to pay your property taxes, or that the absence of paying that will be enforced. So there's a whole bunch of things potentially at play as well that we're trying to work through. And then additionally, as Carrie's report outlined, on top of not paying, say, the property tax, which this may be a financial indicator, is that the water and wastewater bills are not being paid. And then they are being transferred to that property tax arrears, and it's just getting cumulative. And the fact that is, you know, our rates of interest, while they're high, they're a deterrent that you have in place to ensure that you're paying those costs of service. There's a whole realm of things that play in here, the financial economy as one trigger, and then there's potentially other layers that are compounded. But the reality is no community wants to have people in tax arrears. We don't want you to be faced with those kinds of financial crises or stress. But it's important that the municipality is able to collect the taxes that it's owed to provide the service across the community.
And again, Carrie, we talked with this, I know, through COVID, but because we collect tax and remit on behalf of the school board and the county, if we don't get paid, we still have to remit at the regular periods, right? So I mean, it becomes a major cash flow issue for the town. The county and the school board are still gonna get their cash whether we collect it or not, so. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably don't understand that collection function that we have. Basically, we keep 1/3 of what we collect and 2/3 gets paid out regardless of whether we collect it or not. So,
And we are noticing a lot of issues that haven't been common. Where, you know, even the tenants have stopped paying their rent. The landlord can't get them out.
yeah.
So they don't have any money coming in, so they can't pay their taxes. And just situations like that, and. You know, we even have, because we don't change our water to the tenants, the water is still billed to the homeowner. If those tenants aren't paying their rent, they're not paying their water either. So you know, we've even had landlords phone and say, well, can you shut their water off? Well, we can't. But that's what they want to happen, because then their tenant doesn't have any water, so maybe they'll leave, you know, like just very strange things are happening that, you know, we can't shut off water in the winter, so the landlords are all waiting until we can. And they're phoning and asking us, when will you be shutting my tenant's water off? So.
Season's here, yeah. We have it soon.
Anyway.
Okay. Any questions for Karen? Just get a motion to receive that report and. Sure, you said by Mr. Wagner, All in favor? Carried. Right, and the last item on the regular agenda is bylaw to amend our existing bylaw. So I was trying to find the page here. No, found it. I knew my dog heard it earlier. So we're amending the bylaw to rescind the appointment of Carly Arnold as municipal bylaw enforcement officer, and further amending to appoint Damian Davis as bylaw enforcement officer. Okay. Mover and seconder for that. Councilor Blumer. Councilor Donato. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Any notices of motions? Anything in communications tonight? Councilor Blumer.
Number 4, County of Orangeville, read the urban maps.
Yeah.
The fact that, they're not part of the greater GTA, therefore we don't get remitted the way we should. I think we should support that motion and, motion of support for their motion. And I'm willing to put that forward as a mover.
I knew you would.
And I think that exemption, from my understanding, affects Orangeville and town of Mono. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it was an unintended oversight, but yeah, so kudos to them for highlighting it. Any questions or comments on that? No, all in favor? Great. Okay. Anything else in that list?
I just want to highlight number 5, the County of Dufferin through our official plan.
Yeah, that was the sort of the last component, policy component, so still waiting to hear back from the province.
And then
Well, not on that, but on the county's official plan amounts, yeah.
And number 7, the Ontario budget. I don't kind of have to shake my head, but hopefully there is some money in there. They're talking about agreements, they're talking about fluid treatment plants, they're talking about water, talking about all kinds of things. Hopefully there's something in there for children.
Which I think our CAO is gonna.
So through the mayor, thank you. So in follow-up to council's direction, previously, Jennifer did reach out again to the ministers, asking the status of the request for some consultation with regards to allowing the town of Shelburne to be a housing target. And by virtue of that, would be eligible for the larger fund of 2.1 billion. And we have not heard back other than confirmation that your request was received and your patience is appreciated. So with respect to a number of the budgetary announcements that the province made on the 26th of March, the other fund that obviously many municipalities are keenly interested in is the 200 million for recreation infrastructure. Certainly 200 million does not go a long way, similar to the 125 million infrastructure that we are assigned to. As staff noted in some of our recent assessments, many recreation facilities are 40 million and up, depending on the character of the infrastructure, potentially if it's new. So while we were hoping to get information on this fund, which is going to be application based, so that we can support some of our parks and recreation capital needs. Again, $200 million is not anywhere near what the deficit is in parks and recreation and culture infrastructure in the province of Ontario. I recall that in, I think, 2009, the fund that was provided under a different banner was 175 million, and it's now 2024, and it's 200 million. So there really hasn't been a huge uptick in the amount that's invested, but at least it's something. And the application that we are applying for currently under the smaller fund, it closes April 19th, which is coming up quickly, and we will be applying for the max that we're eligible for, so that's about 40 million, or 35 million up to. And the eligibility for that also allows us to take some of the original design and engineering of the 2 million that was committed to and apply that to that. We do realize that in terms of the check boxes and the criteria to get past the initial phase, that we should be actually checking every box with respect to meeting those criteria. And that projects are expected to start by early September, so this is not something we're gonna be waiting a year to hear about. But that doesn't preclude the fact that having access to that greater fund would certainly, given our housing targets list and how constructive that is with developers actually assigned to those projects, that would really support our needs to move forward with the planned expansion.
Anything else, communications? A motion to receive the remaining items. Council Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. Two things which I should have mentioned actually during inquiries. Tomorrow, as council will know, but for the public's benefit, tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the Cenotaph here at Town Hall, there will be a commemoration of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. I think it's supposed to last an hour and a half, but if anybody can make it out for that. That is going on tomorrow. And then on Saturday, April 13th, from 10 to 12, the OPP are going to be at Tim Hortons location at 124 and 89 for a coffee with the cop session. So it's just an opportunity for members of the public, members of council, anybody else from the community to come out and have a word with our local OPP officers in a casual setting.
Sorry, Mr. What time was that again?
10 to 12.
Thanks.
I'm gonna be there right at 10. I don't think I can stay for the full 2 hours, but I'll be there at least for the first hour, so. Yes.
Will we be paying for the coffee and tea?
Yeah, and the inspector will be taking pictures.
That's right.
All right, well, with that, can I get a mover and seconder for the confirming bylaw?
Not busy.
Deputy Mayor Hall.
I'm not a drink.
Seconded by Mike. All in favor? That's carried. Motion adjourned.
There you go.
Councilor Wagner. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Hall. All in favor?
Right? Already got a shirt made.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make you that shirt.